Hi friends, ready to take another, deeper and richer journey through the waves of memory? Today we're going to travel to the heart of the 1980s in the United States, a decade that has forever remained not just in the memories, but in the sensations, sounds and smells of those who grew up during that period. It was a time of incredible change, rapid technological development, vibrant pop culture, and unique moments that cannot be fully conveyed in words to today's generation, but that live in the heart of everyone who lived through those years. From the magic of the first Walkman cassette player in your hands to create your own personal world, to the delight of the lights, sounds, and energy of arcade machines, from the mystery of choosing a movie at the video store, to the simple joys of eating and playing cereal box games, every moment was filled with a unique atmosphere that shaped an entire generation with its own unique way of looking at the world. This decade left its indelible mark on pop culture, in music, movies, technology, fashion, and, of course, in the everyday lives of children and teenagers of that time. We remember not only events, but also sensations, smells, hairspray, new electronics, old paper, sounds, whirring rewinds, clicking buttons, electronic game tunes, textures, Walkman plastic, smooth magazine pages, rough copy paper, that now evoke a warm, sometimes a little sad, but always precious nostalgia. Today we're going to relive those moments, those little daily miracles, trials and tortures that made our childhood and adolescence in the 80s so special and unforgettable. Sit back, pour yourself something warm, fasten your memory belts. We are starting our detailed immersion. The click of a cassette tape in a Walkman, and the world comes to a standstill as a new Bon Jovi or Madonna album plays from the headphones. That distinctive click when the player door closes with a slight resistance, and then the play button is pressed with a recognizable mechanical click, was like a signal to start a private movie or concert. The hustle and bustle of the outside world recedes. External sounds are muted, especially if the headphones were big, foam ones. Your private time begins when nothing can distract you from your favorite tracks. Music became your constant companion, the soundtrack to a ride on a yellow school bus that creaked and shook, a bike ride through the neighborhood that rattled and rustled its tires, or just lying on your bed, staring at the ceiling, immersed in your thoughts and melodies. Cassettes, especially old, poor-quality ones or those that had been stored in a hot car for a long time, would often jam, the tape would squeak or wind up on the roller. Then you had to carefully pull out the cassette and manually rewind the tape, using a pencil or your finger to save the tape by feeling the thin, fragile tape. Batteries, usually AA or AAA, would die at the most inopportune moment, often at the climax of a favorite song or in the middle of an interesting aspect of an album, cutting off the magic. But for the chance to hear their idols again, they were changed every day, buying new ones at the nearest store or pulling them out of the TV remote. Album covers, those little squares of cardboard with photos, lyrics, acknowledgments, and record information, were studied almost like works of art, recognizing songs you didn't yet know the words to by heart, reading the lyrics, trying to make sense of them. The Walkman became more than just a device. It was a symbol of independence, of personal space, a portable refuge in a world where there wasn't much of it. It was an extension of your personality. The noise of rewinding, the quiet hissing of the tape against the music, the feel of the plastic and buttons under your fingers, the occasional smell of the player's heated motor, all part of the Walkman's magic. It's annoying when the VHS rewind hits the wrong scene, especially before a family viewing when everyone is sitting around waiting. The tape would buzz, whistle, or crackle loudly as the VCR rapidly rewound the tape back and forth, trying to find the right spot on the long magnetic tape. There was a tense silence in the room, waiting for the right moment, all eyes fixed on the blinking red time counter on the VM, or the rapidly scrolling frames on the screen. It was often necessary to do several short rewinds, stops, and presses of the play button before finally reaching the right place, flipping through second intervals with excruciating precision, trying to guess where the scene was. The VCR remote control, often large, bulky, with many buttons, sometimes on a wire or with a not very reliable wireless signal, was operated with special respect and attention, like the steering wheel of a spaceship controlling the time and space of a movie. Sometimes in a hurry, due to inattention or simply because the VM was old and inaccurate, an important scene was accidentally flipped through, and this caused a storm of emotion, groans, and unhappy cries from everyone watching, demanding to go back immediately and show what had been missed. But even these imperfections, these sounds and pauses in viewing, the struggle with rewinding were part of the home theater of those years, creating a special, lamp-like, cozy, and slightly unpredictable atmosphere that cannot be replicated today with instant access to any scene. The need to rewind the tape to the end after viewing, be kind, rewind, was not just a video rental rule, but part of the etiquette without which you couldn't return the movie to the store. The rustling of the film when you took the cassette out of the VM, the click of the plastic door, these were all familiar sounds. The feeling of power when holding a cable TV remote in your hand, MTV, Nickelodeon, HBO, and everything else in your hands. A whole universe of on-demand entertainment, almost. The remote, often on a long wire tethered to the TV itself, or the later bulky wireless remote with multiple buttons, seemed like a veritable magical scepter, granting limitless power within the limits of available channels. Changing channels with the distinctive click or sound of a mechanism inside the TV set, and later with the quiet click of a button on the remote, seemed like an act of absolute power over the airwaves, the ability to be instantly transported from the world of news to the world of cartoons, from a sports broadcast to a music video on MTV that was shown endlessly. On MTV, music television, you could binge on an endless string of music videos for hours, discovering new artists, music genres, and trends that you would immediately try to copy. Nickelodeon offered shows unlike anything else, with unique humor and style, like You Can't Do That on Television or Double Dare, that immediately became iconic for kids and teens. HBO and Showtime offered movies without commercials, which was a novelty. Adults, of course, argued if you occupied the only TV in the house with cable TV for too long, taking it away from them, but often relented under the pressure of your arguments, requests, or simply because they were too lazy to argue, or were themselves addicted to something on their channel. Even rustling, snowy channels with no signal or poor image quality aroused curiosity. What if there was something interesting, unknown? Adjusting the antenna on the roof, or rotating the room antenna to get a clear signal, fighting with ripples on the screen. It was almost a ritual, requiring precision and patience. Having cable TV, it wasn't cheap and it wasn't universal, made you advanced, gave you topics to talk about with those who didn't have it, and gave you access to a world that regular kids couldn't see. The sweet tension before a new episode of Knight Rider, The A-Team, Magnum P.I., Miami Vice, Family Ties, or Growing Pains. Television series in the 80s were the centerpiece of the week's social and entertainment events. The viewing schedule was strict. Each episode aired on a specific day and time, and you had to wait 7 long days for your favorite story to continue. These series brought families and friends together around the screen, not only children and teens, but parents as well, creating moments of shared leisure and discussion. The opening credits with their catchy music, colorful visuals, kit car, A-Team explosions, Magnum helicopter, and the introduction of the actors created a rush of energy, anticipation of the exciting plot and witty dialogues. The characters, Michael Knight and his talking car, Kit, a team of former special forces hiding from the government, a private detective in Hawaii, stylish detectives from Miami, the cute Keaton family, were perceived as real heroes, almost friends or family members. Missing an episode meant feeling left out at school recess, when everyone was hotly discussing plot twists, new gadgets, cool cars, or romantic lines. Even commercials that interrupted the action at the most inopportune moments seemed bearable if you knew there was an exciting scene, a witty line from your favorite character, or a spectacular chase ahead. It was a time when shows were watched together at specific times, and this created a strong sense of community and shared cultural experience that united millions of viewers across the country. The cool status feeling of showing off your new Reebok, LA Gear, or Nike Air Jordan sneakers at school. Shoes in the 80s were one of the most important, if not the most important, element of style and status, especially among teens and young adults. New, clean, squeaky clean sneakers were an instant attention grabber at recess in the hallway on the sports field. The first steps in new sneakers felt special, as if you were walking with an invisible light under your feet, feeling taller, more confident, and more fashionable than everyone else. The lacing, often wide white laces, had to be perfectly symmetrical, and the sneakers themselves, perfectly clean without a single stain. The ritual of cleaning with a toothbrush, toothpaste, or special means was commonplace and took a lot of time. Appearance, model, brand, and even color were as important as comfort or sports performance, which were rarely used as intended. Guys evaluatively looked at their classmates' new shoes, not holding back comments, questions about the brand, model, especially if it was a rare or new model, and where it was bought. Sometimes new sneakers caused envy, especially if they were expensive Nike Air Jordans. Sometimes, respect and compliments. Cool kicks. Models with lights in the sole, LA Gear LA lights, or with pumps to fit the foot, Reebok pump, were at the height of their popularity and were particularly exciting to get your hands on. Sneakers were more than just shoes. They were a statement about your style, your interests, basketball, hip-hop, skateboarding, your affiliation with a particular subculture, and even, albeit indirectly, your family's wealth. The smell of new rubber and leather, synthetics, the sound of squeaking soles on a clean floor, the visual shine of clean sneakers are all part of that sense of cool. The fear of recording on an answering machine. You're supposed to sound cool, confident, and at ease to those calling after all. The answering machine, which appeared in many homes in the 80s as a technological innovation, was a little stress and an opportunity for self-expression at the same time. You don't know who's going to call. It could be a friend, an object of affection, or worse, someone you don't want to hear from. And it's important to leave that greeting without sounding too boring, too silly, too awkward, or too formal. Many rehearse their text several times before recording it on an answering machine tape, trying to find the perfect intonation, pace of speech and wording, not too funny so as not to appear unserious, but also not too boring or formal. A stutter, a misspoken word, or an awkward pause while recording seemed like a real failure that every caller would hear, and it was a public humiliation, albeit in a small circle of acquaintances. The intonation and style of the message mattered to create the right image. Relaxed, businesslike, cheerful. The answering machine was a small window into your personal life and reputation. Sometimes a message was recorded on behalf of the whole family, which also required coordination and compromise. Listening to the recordings brought both joy, when someone interesting called or left an amusing message, and Spanish shame at my own failed greetings or awkward messages from friends recorded in a hurry or with giggles. The mechanical sound of the answering machine working, the beeping after the signal to record, the hissing of the tape in the background. It's all part of the memories of an era when voicemail was something new, a little scary, and very personal. The excitement before pressing the rec button on the boombox to record your favorite song from the radio. It was a real ritual that required patience, dexterity, and a bit of luck, and a game of luck. You sat prepared, boombox or tape recorder, standing next to or paired with the radio, finger on the record button. Often you had to press record and play at the same time, or just over the big red rec button, listening to the radio waiting for your favorite track or new hit. It was easy to miss the beginning of a song if you didn't react fast enough, and then the recording would start in the middle of a verse or chorus. Radio announcers would often speak over the first seconds or even chords of a song, mercilessly ruining the recording, or put on a commercial and then start the song immediately, leaving you a second to react. Sometimes you had to wait several hours or even days listening to the radio to record the track cleanly, from beginning to end, without interference, voices, or commercials. Each successful recording became precious, added to your collection of mixtapes, cassettes with your own recorded tracks, which were then listened to until the end. Listening to your hand-recorded mix of favorite songs and radio treasures afterwards was like revisiting your own unique playlist before Spotify. Each song evoked a memory of the moment you recorded it, the mood, the day. Even the hissing of the tape in the background of the music, the slight interference from the radio signal became part of the atmosphere and a sign of a homemade, soulful recording. It was creativity, which required patience, dexterity, and a little bit of fanaticism. The feeling of being an adult when left alone at home and putting yourself a Totino's frozen pizza, bagel bites, or making mac and cheese from a box. Being left alone at home without parental supervision was both a little unsettling, especially in the evening or at night when there were unfamiliar noises in the house, but also incredibly satisfying and exciting. No one controlling what you eat, you can eat all the sweets. What you watch on TV, you can watch anything. Or what you do, you can make noise. Going to the kitchen and deciding to prepare his own food without adult help was a big step towards independence and a symbol of trust from his parents. The instructions on the package of frozen pizza or other convenience foods, like TV dinners, were read aloud or to themselves with the utmost attention, as if they were instructions for launching a rocket so as not to mess anything up. The oven heated up slowly, and there was a distinctive, familiar smell of food cooking, of heated metal, and perhaps some burnt crumbs from previous cooking. Waiting for the food to cook became a ritual. You watched the time on the timer, if there was one, peered into the oven through the glass, watching the cheese rise and the crust brown. When the pizza or mac and cheese was ready, it was taken out of the oven or stove using oven mitts, careful, cut into slices like in a real restaurant, in the case of pizza, and eaten sitting in front of the TV on the couch, feeling absolute freedom. Lunch or dinner alone, cooked with one's own hands, albeit from semi-finished products, seemed like a real holiday, a symbol of growing up and self-sufficiency. The smell of melted cheese, tomato sauce, or butter and cheese powder, the crunch of the first slice of pizza, or the creamy texture of mac and cheese are all part of that feeling of freedom and adulthood. The thrill of seeing a new issue of Tiger, Beat, Bop, 17, or Rolling Stone magazine in the supermarket or at the checkout stand. Teen magazines were the ultimate source of information, gossip, fashion, and idols in the 70s and 80s. They lay at the checkout counter, tempting with bright, glossy covers with photos of the most fashionable stars of the moment. Actors from popular TV series, singers and musicians, models. Seeing a new issue was a small celebration that instantly lifted the mood. Buying it, if you had enough pocket money or managed to beg it from your parents, was a great luck. The posters folded inside the magazine, often in the center or on the last pages, were a real treasure and an object of special hunting. They were carefully pulled out, unfolded, and hung on the walls of the room, creating their own personal iconostasis. Interviews with idols, articles about fashion and music, horoscopes, compatibility tests, letters from readers with advice, all of this caused a storm of emotions and became topics for endless discussions with friends. Sometimes, if there were different stars on the cover or the magazine contained many posters, 2 copies were bought at once, one for reading and cutting out, the other to keep in perfect condition as a collector's item. The pages of new magazines smelled of typography, fresh paper, and the promise of a world of stars and fame. After reading everything from cover to cover, discussing with friends which stars were cooler, who was dating whom, which trends were the hottest was a mandatory ritual. The smell of printing ink, the gloss of the pages, the rustle of the paper being turned over. It was all part of this fascination. The feeling of freedom when riding down the block on a BMX or skateboard without a helmet. Times were simpler and less safety conscious than they are now, and the word hype was not yet used in that context. Roads, sidewalks, parking lots, steps, curbs, ramps, abandoned swimming pools. Everything was turned into tracks and obstacles for tricks and riding. A BMX bike or skateboard was not just a means of transportation, but an extension of the body, a way to get around, express oneself, and explore the world. The wind fluttered your hair, if it was long, and it seemed that nothing was impossible, that you could overcome any obstacle. Jumping off curbs, sliding down railings, racing with friends to the nearest corner or store filled the afternoons after school until dusk when parents called home. Returning home with scraped knees, elbows, bruises, and abrasions was commonplace and considered a matter of honor. Proof that the day had not been wasted and was full of adventure and courage. Each evening ended tired but happy, with a sense of complete freedom experienced at speed and in motion. The sounds of spinning wheels, the scraping of a board or pedals, the clanking of a chain, the sound of wind in my ears, the smell of heated asphalt in summer, all part of the soundtrack to this feeling of freedom and adrenaline. Panic if you accidentally crumple a baseball card, because it's very valuable to a collection. Baseball cards, which were sold in packs together with gum, often hard, sweet, and tasteless, which quickly lost its taste, were a real fetish and an object of collecting, exchange, and investment in children's understanding. They were stored with special care in special plastic folders with cells, which were a separate pleasure to leaf through, tied with a rubber band or simply in shoe boxes, like a real treasure. Each card was evaluated by its condition. The corners had to be perfectly straight, without rounding, the surface without scratches, without gum stains, which was often glued to the top card in the pack. An accidentally crumpled corner, a bent or, heaven forbid, torn card, it caused inner withering fear, frustration, and almost physical pain if it was a rare or favorite card. Dropping it on the floor, careless handling, all were sources of stress. Exchanging cards at recess or after school was a whole ritual, a real trading session where every detail was important. The condition of the card, the rarity of the player, the year of issue, the brand. Topps was the most famous. A crumpled card could instantly lose its value in the eyes of collector friends. It might not be traded for, or it might be offered something of no value at all. Sometimes you had to hide the damage as a real fault or shame, hoping no one would notice. The smell of old gum and cardboard from the pack, the rustle of the card album pages, the click when you flick a card with your finger. It's all part of this serious hobby. Delight in a new set of scratch and sniff stickers, especially one that smells like cola, strawberries, pizza, or even smelly feet. The scratch and sniff stickers, literally rub and sniff, were a small marvel of technology and a source of endless fun and wonder. Each sticker, covered with microcapsules of flavoring, held a unique scent that was released when rubbed with a finger or fingernail. Adults didn't always understand what the fun was, but children felt the magic and delight of being able to smell a sticker that smelled like strawberry, banana, chocolate, pizza, cola, hamburger, gum, or even strange or slightly unpleasant smells like foot odor, garlic, or rubber, which were also interestingly unusual. Collections of these stickers were carefully kept in special albums or notebooks, and each new sticker, bought in a store or received in exchange, caused joy. Some smells were so vivid, recognizable, and delicious that they caused salivation. One rare or particularly delicious smelling sticker could be the occasion for a whole chain of exchanges in the classroom or on the street. The sticky residue on your fingers after rubbing and sticking the sticker and the lingering smell was like a sign that the day was successful and full of little flavorful joys. The satisfaction of having a Capri Sun, Lunchables, and a pack of Doritos for lunch, and everyone's envious of you. In the school cafeteria or at recess, when pulling out my lunchbox, a set of Capri Sun, Lunchables, and a pack of Doritos was like a mini jackpot, the envy of the neighborhood. The bright, shiny packaging of the Capri Sun glowed like gold bullion, and the ritual of inserting the tube into the foil with a distinctive piercing sound was an almost sacred act. Lunchables gave the feeling of eating like an adult, assembling your own sandwiches of crackers, cheese, and sausage with a small candy bar or chocolate bar for dessert in a special plastic tray. The crunch of Doritos chips, often nacho cheese or Cool Ranch, echoed throughout the lunchroom or classroom, attracting attention. I always wanted to open the packets perfectly without tearing them, Classmates looked at such a lunch with respect, sometimes even offering to exchange it for their less cool or just more ordinary sandwiches from home. Such a lunch was like a mini holiday in the midst of a normal school day, a symbol of belonging to a world where food was also entertainment, brand, and status. The smell of cheese powder with Doritos, the sweet and slightly artificial taste of Capri Sun, the plastic taste of Lunchables, the rustling of packages. These gustatory, olfactory, and auditory memories are strong to this day. The anxious wait in the arcade until your turn to play Pac-Man, Galaga, Donkey Kong, or Space Invaders finally arrives. Arcade parlors in the 80s were magical, noisy, glowing places filled with sound, light, and energy. The quarters in your pocket seemed especially heavy and valuable. Each of them was a chance to show your skill, to break a record, to leave your initials on the leaderboard. The queue for the most popular machines, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga, Donkey Kong, Centipede, Asteroids, was growing, and my fingers were already instinctively repeating the movements of the joystick and buttons, watching the game of others. When someone else's initials went out on the machine screen, your heart began to beat faster with anticipation. It was your turn. You put a quarter in the slot, the tinkling sound of a falling coin, and the game began. Sometimes someone who had run out of quarters offered to exchange places for a symbolic fee, but it was hard to give up your throne. The sounds of the machines, constant beeps, boops, explosions, electronic music, voice samples, merged into a single deafening symphony of chaos, excitement, and fun. The glowing screens with bright pixel graphics, the smell of popcorn, pizza, sweet sodas, and a bit of musty air created a unique atmosphere. Even just standing behind a wizard who was showing incredible results, spending one quarter after another, was almost as exciting as playing the game yourself. The feel of the smooth or worn joystick ball under your hand, the click of the big plastic buttons, it's all part of the magic of arcades. The awkwardness of your parents turning on the karaoke microphone at a house party and expecting you to sing "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" like a prayer or another popular song. Karaoke, which emerged and became a popular home entertainment in the 80s, was a bit of an ordeal, especially for teenagers. The microphone was passed from hand to hand like a hot potato, especially when the turn came to the kids or the shyest. All the adults looked on expectantly, smiled, and clapped their hands in encouragement. And it was almost impossible to back out, to refuse to sing, even if you were terribly shy and didn't hit the notes. The lyrics, often running lines on the TV screen, sometimes with primitive graphics, seemed familiar. But as soon as the phonogram was turned on and the singing began, your voice trembled and your legs shook with excitement. The song was accompanied by clapping, applause, and laughter, often at your mistakes or awkward movements. And even if you sang badly, it became part of the general fun and a reason for jokes that were remembered later. After the performance, I wanted to hide under the table from embarrassment and pour myself a lot of punch. But the next day, the memory of the embarrassing moment somehow warmed my soul because it was an opportunity to be in the center of attention, albeit for a short time and not entirely of my own free will. The sound of the microphone, the background track with the missing vocals, your own trembling voice, the voices of adults singing along or laughing, all part of the memories of house parties in the 80s. The thrill of walking into a blockbuster video rental store or any other local videotape store and realizing you have a selection of movies for the entire weekend. Video rentals were temples of home movies, places of pilgrimage on Friday nights. The racks filled with rows of plastic boxes of cassettes seemed endless, and each cover, with brightly colored artwork or spectacular photos from the movie, promised a separate universe, new adventures, laughter, or fear. An important decision had to be made, sometimes after long arguments with parents or friends. Whether to take an action movie, comedy, horror, sci-fi, or cartoon. There were similarly focused people walking around, families, friends, teenagers, taking their time, perusing the new releases on the special shelves and the classics by genre. Boxes labeled "rented out" hanging on empty seats were frustrating and forced people to quickly look for an alternative before someone else took it. The movie, finally chosen after much hesitation and discussion, was carried home like a jewel, anticipating the evening viewing. And Friday or Saturday evening turned into a real event, especially if you had enough money for popcorn or sweet soda from the machine at the entrance to the rental. The smell of plastic boxes, carpeting, and perhaps fresh popcorn in the room, the sound of clicking when you open a box with a cassette, the visual abundance of brightly colored covers, all this is part of the ritual of going to a video rental, the anticipation of movie magic, the joy of finding a toy in the cereal box in the morning, and it's a really cool toy, not some nonsense. The morning began with a ritual. Open a new box of my favorite sweet cereal. Cap'n Crunch with Crunch the Pirate, Lucky Charms with a leprechaun, Trix with a rabbit, Cheerios, honeycomb, with a bright cartoon character on the package, stick my hand inside, often right into the cereal bag, which, again, is not very hygienic. But who thought about that in the 80s? And feel the plastic surprise at the bottom. Sometimes I had to climb up to my elbow or even pour some of the cereal into the bowl or on the table to get to the bottom where the toy was. There were stickers, transfer pictures. There were mini toys made of plastic. Cars, soldiers, figures of cartoon characters like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Disney characters, or Looney Tunes. Sometimes even tiny comic books, puzzles, or whistles. Opening a package of cereal turned into a morning lottery, a moment of anticipation and hope. If there was nothing in the box, which was rare but a disaster, or some boring, uninteresting nonsense, the disappointment was almost physical. When a toy was really cool, it became a source of pride, taken to school to show to friends at recess, or used for games at home. Collections of these cereal prizes were kept on a shelf of honor in the room, in a special dresser drawer, or in a shoebox. The rustling of the cereal bag, the feel of the plastic under your fingers, the sound of the toy falling out of the bag into the bowl, the brightly colored plastic toy emerging from the depths. It's all part of this 80s morning mini miracle and marketing genius. There is an inexpressible sense of pride when a teacher chooses your typed essay to read aloud in front of the whole class. In an era before printers and home computers were ubiquitous, if you wanted your schoolwork, essay report, to look neat and professional rather than handwritten, you had to use a typewriter, your own, your parents', or the school's. Every word, every letter had to be typed manually, with effort tapping the keys. Mistakes were not forgiven as easily as when writing with a pen. It was necessary to use a corrector, putty, a white liquid or tape, and carefully correct, which was often noticeable or, even worse, and required time and patience, to start the page again. When the work was finished, a few pages of text, neatly typed, with the margins respected, no blotches, it was viewed as a true work of art and labor. When they heard their name in class and the teacher's words, "Today I want to read out a particularly good paper," the teacher's voice reading your own words in front of the whole class seemed louder than usual, and you sat at your desk, trying not to blush, and listened to your text, noticing perhaps some awkward phrases or typos, but generally feeling triumphant. After the lesson, his classmates could come up and say, "Hey, cool essay, nice essay." It was public recognition of your effort, ability, and hard work. The sound of the typewriter, the smell of ink from the ribbon, and the smell of the proofreader, the feel of paper under your fingers, all these things were associated with this labor-intensive process. Peace and coziness from the sound of the fan running and the light of the lamp on the bedside table, under a book or a comic book. After a long day filled with school events, household chores, playing outside and socializing with friends, the evening time spent in your room became a zone of absolute peace and comfort. Your personal refuge. There was silence in the room, broken only by the measured, monotonous hum or rustle of a running fan, if it was warm in summer, or the soft ticking of a wall or table clock. The dim, warm light of the lamp on the bedside table created a cozy cocoon, highlighting just your reading spot. A plaid, a pillow, a stack of your favorite books, adventure novels, detectives, sci-fi, or a fresh issue of comic books, Marvel, DC, Image, depending on your preference, all blended into one zone of safety and peace. You were immersed in the world of the story, oblivious to everything else going on outside the room. No one rushed you, no one distracted you, no phone calls, or you could just not pick up the phone. Time seemed to slow down or stop altogether. It was getting dark outside the window. The city was falling asleep. But inside in your little room, it was warm, calm, and safe. The rustle of turning pages, the smell of old or new paper, the feeling of a heavy book or a stack of comics in your hands. All this contributed to a complete immersion in reading, unlike the turmoil of the day. And that same magical feeling that the future is lasers, robots, and space. And it's all almost here. The 1980s were a time of incredible technological optimism and belief in a bright, high-tech future, inspired by pop culture. Movies, Star Wars continued to influence, and Back to the Future, Short Circuit, RoboCop, Blade Runner, Aliens, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Magazines like Popular Science or Omni, toys, Transformers, Voltron, Star Wars, cartoons, Robotech, Voltron, Transformers, music, electronic, synth pop, promised an incredible future full of wonders and breakthroughs. Robots from the screen, like Kit from Knight Rider or Johnny Five from Short Circuit, seem not just science fiction, but a very real near tomorrow. Lasers were not only in movies and on magazine covers, but also in toys, at concerts, and in laser pointers. Space was not scary and unattainable, as in the Cold War era, but alluring and mysterious, full of adventure, colonies on the moon and Mars, and new discoveries. Even school lessons in physics, chemistry, or astronomy sometimes seem like a step towards this future, towards mastering new technologies. Comic books drew flying cars, teleports, cities on Mars and Venus, robotic assistance, and space travel for everyone. The world was full of expectation and an almost unshakable certainty that it was all bound to come true and you would be part of this amazing high-tech future that was about to arrive. The sounds of lasers and electronic robot voices from movies, the vivid visual images of spaceships and futuristic cities from movies and cartoons, all this fed the imagination, created the feeling that you were living on the threshold of something great, and every day was a step towards this future. The 1980s were a time of simple but such memorable joys, small daily rituals and sensations that leave a warm, living imprint on the heart of everyone who grew up in that era. These moments, whether it was the joy of a new album on a cassette, the thrill of the arcade machines, the pride of the first toy in a cereal box, or simply the comfort of the light of a lamp and the sound of a fan, formed the unique atmosphere of that time. All these experiences became an integral part of growing up, and now they remind us how important it is to appreciate small joys and moments that seem insignificant but give life a special meaning and flavor. After all, these were not just years. It was a time when the future seemed incredibly close, full of wonders and possibilities, and every day was a step towards it. Thank you for taking this nostalgic journey with me. I hope these memories brought a smile to your face and maybe you experienced the smells and sounds of that time. Subscribe to the channel if you want to dive even deeper into the atmosphere of past decades. Give us a like if you liked it and share your most vivid memories of the 80s in the comments. See you soon.